All right, let's dive into the world of DevOps. It's a philosophy, really, that has totally changed the game for how we build and ship software. But to really get why it's so important, we have to start with a pretty simple question.
So, what is it? What's the number one thing that slows software teams down? For years, the industry was just plagued by this problem. You had teams not talking to each other, tons of manual work, and deployments that would just, break at the worst possible moment.
And you can really see the massive difference here. In the old way, everything was linear, like an assembly line. Teams were in their own little boxes, they'd release these huge updates maybe once or twice a year, and every single deployment was just terrifyingly high risk. The new way, it's the exact opposite. It's a continuous cycle. The teams work together, and they push out small, frequent updates that are way, way safer. It's a total mindset shift.
So here's our game plan. We're going to start by looking at that old way of doing things, the whole dev versus ops problem. Then we'll introduce the DevOps philosophy and its engine, which is CI/CD. After that, we'll take a trip through the lifecycle, check out the tools that make it all happen, and wrap up with the bottom line, the payoff.
Okay, so let's rewind a bit and understand the problem that DevOps was born to solve. It's this historic battle between the people who build the software, the developers, and the people who run it, the operations team. And it created what people call the wall of confusion.
This quote just hits the nail on the head, right? The dev team would finish their code and basically just toss it over this imaginary wall to the ops team. And what happened next? A whole lot of finger pointing. The devs would say, "Hey, it works on my machine," while the ops team was pulling their hair out trying to get this mysterious code to actually run. This friction wasn't just annoying. It could stall releases for weeks, sometimes even months.
I love this sports analogy because it makes so much sense. The old way, the software development lifecycle, it was like a relay race. One person runs their lap and then has to perfectly hand off the baton to the next person. Every single handoff is a potential point of failure and delay. DevOps, on the other hand, is like a game of rugby. The whole team, developers, operations, testers, everyone, is on the field together, passing the ball back and forth and moving as one unit toward the goal line. It's all about collaboration.
So how do you solve this? How do you tear down that wall? Well, you don't just patch it up. You create a whole new philosophy that actually merges development and operations. And that is where DevOps comes from.
And this is the absolute key. At its heart, DevOps is a cultural philosophy. It's not about buying a new tool. It's about changing how people work together, breaking down those silos, and getting teams to communicate. The goal is really simple: deliver better software to users and do it faster.
And if there's one image you should remember from all of this, it's the infinity loop. This perfectly captures the spirit of DevOps. It's not a straight line with a start and a finish. It's a continuous, never-ending cycle of planning, building, testing, deploying, getting feedback, and starting all over again, always getting a little bit better.
Now, a philosophy is great, but you need an engine to actually make it go. And in the world of DevOps, that engine is something called a CI/CD pipeline. This is what automates the entire journey from a developer typing code to that code running live for users. So let's break down CI/CD. First up is CI, continuous integration. Think of it like this. Instead of developers working in isolation for weeks, they merge their code into a central place, like a Git repository, multiple times a day. And every single time they do that, an automated build and a series of tests are run. This lets you catch bugs almost immediately and keeps the main code base healthy and stable.
The next piece of the puzzle is continuous delivery. This takes everything from continuous integration and adds another layer. Every code change that passes the tests is automatically prepared and packaged up so that it's ready to be released. The software is always in a deployable state. The key thing here, though, is that the final push to production is a manual step. Someone has to actually click a button, usually after a business decision.
And finally, we have continuous deployment. This is the final evolution. It takes that manual button push out of the equation entirely. If a piece of code passes all the automated tests, it's automatically deployed to production. That's it. No human intervention needed. This is how elite teams can deploy changes dozens or even hundreds of times a day.
Okay, so let's zoom back in on that infinity loop and actually walk through the different stages that make it all work. There are basically 7 continuous phases that keep this whole cycle in motion.
You can kind of think of the loop in 2 halves. The left side is all about building and shipping new stuff. It starts with development, planning and writing code. Then you've got integration to merge it all, testing to make sure it works, and finally, deployment to get it out there. But once it's live, we move to the right side of the loop, which is all about operating and learning.
We gather feedback from our users, we use monitoring tools to see how the app is performing, and operations make sure it stays up and running. And that feedback flows right back into the planning for the next cycle. It never stops.
So how does all this magic actually happen? Well, it's not magic, it's automation. And that automation is powered by a massive ecosystem of tools that handle every single phase of this cycle. And here are just a few of the big players that make this whole thing possible. For planning your work and managing your code, you've got tools like Jira and Git. For the CI/CD part, Jenkins is a classic workhorse. For testing, Selenium is huge for automating web browsers. But maybe the biggest revolution has been in deployment, with tools like Docker and Kubernetes. They let you package your application into a container that runs the same way everywhere. And then for monitoring, things like Prometheus and Grafana give you these incredible dashboards to see what's happening in real time.
And a foundation for all of this? It's the cloud. As you can see from early 2024 numbers, providers like AWS, Azure, and Google Cloud are the dominant platforms where all of this happens. They provide the automated, on-demand infrastructure that you absolutely need to make a modern DevOps practice work.
Okay, we've talked about the philosophy, the process, and the tools, but let's get to the most important question of all. Why? Why do all this? What's the actual business payoff?
The benefits here are huge, and they all kind of domino into each other. Because you're releasing smaller changes more often, you get new features to your customers way faster. And you might think moving faster means breaking things, but it's the opposite. Your systems actually become more stable. That leads to higher quality, better teamwork, and way less burnout from people constantly putting out fires. And all of that adds up to the most important thing: happier customers.
And look, this isn't just a theory. The proof is in the numbers. A whopping 86% of businesses are now using DevOps to get their software out the door faster. This isn't some niche trend anymore. It's become the standard for how high-performing tech companies operate.
So we end right where we started, with that infinite loop. Because DevOps isn't something you finish. It's a culture of constant improvement. So the real question to walk away with is this: where in this loop, in this cycle, can you and your team get just a little bit better, a little bit faster, and a little bit more collaborative?